Good morning and welcome to the Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and I'm joined with my fellow colleagues, Justice from New York, Robert from New Jersey, and Jeremy from Indiana. And gentlemen, what a whirlwind of news in the NFL. Holy smokes. There's a lot going on out there, and I can already tell by some of the chatter from the fans. Everyone definitely is intrigued by a lot of these coaching hires, some of the general manager hires. But what I would like to jump into first, before we talk about some of these things, is what's your thoughts on the NFL's decision on the combine? So there's no in-person combine. Are there any impacts to this? I think a lot of players, they look forward to this, and I think we all get it. COVID does not allow, the NFL to do the things that they truly want to do. But the combine is really that showcase, especially when you talk about your draft stock. So I don't know, Justice, what do you think? What's the impacts in your opinion?
Yeah, this impacts the NFL teams very highly. They go to the combine to, check out these players' athletic ability, their explosiveness in space, and how they test. And to not be able to get eyes on players in person, it really kind of hinders that ability to evaluate players. It's going to be tough for teams and scouts to really get good eyes on these players. Having a virtual session is kind of difficult. It's unknown what they're going to be doing at these pro days, what kind of drills they're going to be doing. Is it going to be the regular combine drills? So it's definitely going to be tough on these scouts to really get good eyes on these players. But me personally, I'm a film guy. I think film says a lot about a player. That's what you need to know about a player, and I think the scouts just need to lean heavily on that.
Well, I tell you, that's funny you mentioned film. I've said this in the last episode. I'll say it again here. As a former coach, I like film also because the one thing that film doesn't do, it doesn't lie. Films don't lie. So I think a lot of scouts out there are definitely going to be relied upon heavily, especially when you talk about regional scouts, remote scouts. I think a lot of teams are going to really rely on scouts. Scouts are going to earn their money this year when it comes to looking at some of the film. Now, but one of the things you mentioned, and Jeremy, what I'm curious about is, a lot of these universities now are going to have a huge responsibility. I mean, putting on one legit pro day to highlight those players. So I'm curious, what should we expect from the universities on these pro days?
Yeah, the situation is almost completely backwards from where it was last year, because last year before COVID kind of started shutting things down, the NFL Combine did happen. And then you saw schools start canceling pro days once COVID came around because they started thinking, well, we're going to avoid risking the health of our players. And some of these guys have already had an opportunity to showcase their abilities at the NFL Combine. It's completely different this year. There is no NFL Combine. The schools are obligated to their players to make sure that these pro days happen this year. Last year schools were canceling pro days left and right just for the sake of caution. I think this year they're going to have to be even more diligent about making sure that happens, making sure the right protocols are in place to allow people to come in and watch these guys perform, athletic drills, official height measurement drills, or, those type of measurables. That's all something scouts want to see, And one other thing I think that kind of got overlooked is with the NFL Combine getting canceled, I don't know about you guys, but how many scouts were actually able to travel to ball games this year to see these guys in person? I think that's definitely a factor that you have to take in here, that these pro days are going to be so important for these players, but also for these coaching staffs and scouts. so they can go see these guys in person, so they can go interview these guys in person. One of the biggest things about the Combine is teams get so many allotted interview slots that they're just going to simply lose out on this year. So these pro days are, cataclysmically important to building your roster for the future for, the 2021 season.
Robert, piggybacking on what Jeremy is saying, that's one of the concerns I have is when you talk about traveling, I know a lot of these teams are going to have virtual interviews for these players that they're interested in. But at the same time, you need those scouts at those pro days. To me, yeah, you can rely on film, and I'm a huge advocate of film, but you definitely want to also be there instead of just relying on numbers being conveyed to you. So, how do you think this is going to play out for those scouts and those general managers who may or may not go to a pro day at a university?
You're right, Roland. I agree with Justice and Jeremy and yourself as well. This is going to be pretty interesting. Just like Jeremy said, we actually had a combine last, season, and we're not going to have that. And I'll tell you what, a lot of those players are going to be upset because the thing about having a combine is that, for some of those players, you get 2 cracks at the apple cart. I mean, if you have a bad combine, you can't go and have a good pro day. We've seen that last year with Cameron Dantzler. He had a horrible combine, but he stepped in. He had an amazing pro day, and, he upped his stock in the draft. So those players is not going to have that opportunity to double dip. So if you have a bad pro day, that's going to be it. So, and just like your point about scouts, I mean, how many scouts actually went out to these games that we had with the COVID regulations to actually see these athletes in person? I tell you what, if I go shop for a new car, I don't want to buy it online. I want to go into the dealership and I want to see it for myself in first person. And that's the thing that you're kind of getting with having no combine and the virtual, virtual meetings, virtual interviews. You kind of want to see, these athletes and these young men in person. So I think it's going to be very interesting moving forward.
Hey, I'm with you on that one. That's a great analogy, by the way. We're going to sit back and watch this one and see how it all plays out. For the audience out there, I just want to highlight this because to this very day, I still think is one of the best moments I've ever had at an NFL Combine. In the end of February, March time frame for the NFL Combine, Jeremy and Robert and I were at the Combine. And I think one of the coolest experiences we had, we were sitting at the bar, and here we're sitting there with Stephen Belichick and Gerard Mayo, and our fellow colleague Robert is going toe-to-toe, scout the coach, talking about the Patriots scheme, talking about players and how they would fit in different schemes. And one of the best experiences I've ever had at an NFL Combine. So, Robert, thank you for that entertainment. It definitely made my day. I know it made Jeremy's day because we sat there and we did a lot of chuckling. So, hey, having said that and talking about, scouts and what we do, there's another thing, right? There's no East-West Shrine Bowl. So, we can't go down there. However, there's the Reese's Senior Bowl. And I'm happy to announce here on the Extra Point that all of our colleagues here, to include myself, we receive media credentials to actually be a part of the Senior Bowl. So kudos to Justice Robert, Jeremy, and myself for getting those media credentials. But what are you guys looking for? What's going to stand out for you down there at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on these wide receiver groups at the Senior Bowl. I mean, this group is loaded. Shi Smith out of South Carolina, he's a smaller guy. I really love what he brings to the table. Tylan Wallace, Oklahoma State. Again, a smaller guy, slim frame, but he can go up and get it. Speedster, he can outrun you. Kadarius Toney, Roberts guy out of Florida. I absolutely love him. He's a very shifty slot guy who can make things happen after the catch. And I'm also looking at this running back group. Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. I've been on him for a while now. People forget what he brings to the table. He kind of opted out after, I think it was 4 or 5 games. He's going to have a week at the Senior Bowl. People need to keep an eye out for him. Trey Sermon at Ohio State, he's going to be there. We all know what kind of season he had. It's definitely going to be a great week, and I'm excited to see what these players can bring.
Well, for me personally, I always like to scout linemen. And one intriguing offensive lineman that's going to be down in Mobile this week is Spencer Brown. He's a small school offensive tackle out of, I believe it's North Dakota State or North Dakota. Can't remember which one. But he is 6'9", 330-some pounds and moves like a guy, 70 pounds lighter than what he is. Along with Dylan Radun, another guy from, North Dakota State, Bison product there. Both of these guys are two of the most athletic tackles I've evaluated this year just on tape alone. They didn't really get a great opportunity, but I've watched them in the past. These guys just move extremely well, and they move people too. I think they're really going to have a chance to shine down there. And Brown has been training with 49ers legend left tackle Joe Staley this offseason. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing how those two small school offensive tackles perform down where they're going to be facing, some very good defensive linemen and linebackers as far as blocking drills and stuff go, and just how they acclimate to the experience.
For me, Roland, it's going to be 2 individual players that I'll be looking at. And one of those players are, of course, Devontae Smith. We just had a discussion about, no combine. And I think, this was a perfect decision on Devontae Smith's part to actually go down there to the Senior Bowl to get ahead of the curve and have those interviews and kind of showcase, his measurements. And, I don't know if he's going to be playing as much because, he had the injury in the national championship game. But just to be there in front of the, the front office personnel of some of these, NFL teams that have a high draft pick, I think it's going to bode well for Devontae Smith. And another player, Elijah Molden out of Washington. I think he's kind of in that Tyrann Mathieu, Buda Baker hybrid safety corner that can actually play all over the field and kind of get the job done on slot receivers, on the outside receivers. So I'm really to see how he fares down there in the Senior Bowl.
Justice kind of took the guy I wanted to highlight, Sermon. I'm curious. I'm curious because I want to make sure that this guy, and this is going to sound weird to the audience, I want to make sure that this guy is not a fluke. I want to make sure that this guy is truly the goods. Right now, there's a lot of running backs that are being highlighted in the NFL right now. And does this guy, and can this guy put a team, no, definitely not in the first year in the league, but let's say in the second or third year, can he actually get a starting role somewhere? Can he actually be a legit second or third down back that can go in and get that extra yardage? Yep, what we saw him do in several games towards the end of the season was absolutely phenomenal. But we didn't see that early on. So he grew into that. Can he continue to grow as a legit star running back? I'm very curious. So we'll see what's going to happen down there. I'm very interested and definitely am excited that we'll be able to participate also from an extra point perspective down at the Senior Bowl. Kind of redirecting our energy here real quick. There's a lot of hot topics in the NFL. We got some coaches that have gotten hired, and kudos to them. We got some general managers, some shuffling there. Kudos to those guys. But then we got some of the player items, right? Just yesterday, we had Phillip Rivers announce his official retirement. So, he's headed out into the sunset. And then on the flip side of that same coin, you got some players that are done with their organization. Flat out done. They don't want to talk to the general manager. They don't want to talk to the coaches. Matter of fact, they've been very vocal about how they feel about the coaching staff. And I think everyone knows who I'm speaking about. And that is Deshaun Watson. I don't know, gentlemen. Will he get traded? Will he stay in place? Let's put it up for debate. Justice, What do you think? Is he leaving or is he staying?
Deshaun Watson will not be a Houston Texan in 2021.
Woo.
I'm just going to say it right now.
Here we go. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, the Houston Texans have, really have really destroyed Deshaun Watson. They really have done wrong by him for the past few years. I mean, the first thing being, they traded his number one receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. This guy is the best receiver in the league. I think Devontae Adams is a close number two, but there's no doubt Hopkins is number one. When you trade an elite wide receiver like that from your franchise quarterback, who has done nothing but carry your team to the playoffs, yes, they haven't been successful that much in the playoffs, but he has carried that franchise. He has carried himself with nothing but respect. He's probably, one of the cleanest guys you'll ever find off field. He doesn't party. He doesn't do any of that. He is what you look for in a young quarterback and someone you want to carry. Someone you want to carry your franchise, and you trade his number one wide receiver, and then this offseason, you go to him personally. He doesn't come to you. You go to him personally and ask for his opinion on who to hire and who to consider, and then you go behind his back and don't even interview who he wants. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It's one thing if the Houston Texans wanted to hire their guy from day one, but to go to the kid and ask for his opinion and completely ignore him, some people are calling him a diva for it. I don't see that at all. The Houston Texans have screwed themselves out of this one. They've wasted their first-round picks for the last few years. They blew those picks. The Houston Texans, they're a dumpster fire right now. That head coaching position, it's going to be a mess. The GM position is going to be a mess. They're going to have to work their tails off to fix it. And, I wish the best for Deshaun Watson, but I don't see him as a Houston Texan this coming year.
All right here on the extra point, we got Justice saying Deshaun Watson will not be a Houston Texan. But I got this very eerie feeling that I got another colleague on right now who will refute what Justice is saying. I don't know. Maybe he lives out in Indiana. Jeremy, will you refute Justice's thoughts on Deshaun?
I will refute it to a point.
Oh.
I do think Justice makes some great points there. He really does. I don't think it's any doubt why the Houston Texans head coaching position, why it's the last one that's been unfilled. There's so much uncertainty down in Houston on whether you're going to have a franchise quarterback. You already know you don't have the draft picks coming in there. I think it's the trading of him is more complicated than it seems. I do think, though, that there is a good chance he has played his last down as a Texan, only because you've seen the star players recently that have complained. They have found new homes. Antonio Brown pitched a fit. Eventually the Steelers had to get rid of him.
Right.
Had to get rid of him.
True.
I think this could be a similar situation. The situations are very different as to why these trades are happening. Deshaun Watson just wants a clean start in an organization that's going to try to win ball games. The Antonio Brown situation was a me diva situation. I just want to get paid more. This is Deshaun Watson saying, my best football's still ahead of me. I want to be with an organization that's going to do the best by me. Now, they did interview Eric Bieniemy. Obviously, they can't announce him as their head coach until the Chiefs are done on their Super Bowl run. I am still a staunch believer that the Chiefs are going to repeat back-to-back Super Bowls. I do think they're going to find a way to do that this year. So if Bieniemy is their guy, they can't announce it yet. Nothing's leaked to say that they have either. So
very true.
I think the situation is just more complicated than it is than just as. I just don't think it's that easy to say, yeah, it's definitive that Watson's played his last down as a Houston Texan. I think we need to see kind of more things happen behind the scenes before that really happens. First, the Texans have to announce their head coach.
Gotcha. Robert, I don't know. You've heard Justice. You've heard Jeremy. You haven't heard me yet, but we're going to go to you.
Yeah, Roland. Justice and Jeremy actually made some good points. I tell you what, I think if Deshaun Watson wants to be a Houston Texan, he will stay a Houston Texan. But if Deshaun Watson wants to be traded, he will get traded. And I tell you what, this is the paradigm shift that we're seeing with these new generational athletes. We're talking about the Houston Texans, and we saw another star Houston player get traded away, and that's James Harden.
Jeez,
I know we're talking about.
You took it right out of my mouth.
I know we're talking about the NBA and the NFL, which are definitely different because, in the NBA you have fully guaranteed contracts, and in the NFL you really don't have fully guaranteed contracts. But the one leverage that Deshaun Watson has is that he's a quarterback. Deshaun Watson led the NFL this year in passing yards with no true number one receiver. You traded your true number one receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, away, and Deshaun Watson just so happens still leads the league in passing yards. This is ridiculous. Deshaun Watson is the top, one of the three top quarterbacks that we have in the NFL, and he's only getting better. So I tell you what, in this regards, it seems like Deshaun Watson have all the leverage. I know he has a no trade clause built in, so it's going to be hard to kind of shop him around. You have former players kind of advocating for him. You hear the Richard Sherman saying, "Hey, if I was the New York Jets, I would definitely go after Deshaun Watson." You hear Andre Johnson say, "Hey, I've been a huge Andre Johnson fan from when he came into the league, and he was wasted away in that Houston Texans organization. He's actually out there supporting Deshaun Watson." So I think Deshaun Watson, if he wants to get traded, he will get traded. And I think he wants to, but, we have to hear from the horse's mouth. I haven't seen anything from Deshaun Watson, so I would just take the wait-and-see approach.
Well, and I'm of the same mindset, actually. One of the things I think we have to sit back and wait and see is, what type of moves are the Texans going to put in play that will at least give Watson the inkling that maybe the organization wants to move in the right direction and they are listening to him? Right now, he's not seeing that. And because he's not seeing that, and because of the way he's been treated, and because of the way last season went, and because of how his top receiver, was traded, I think those things will make a nasty gumbo mix to force him out of Texas. Do I think he wants to stay a Houston Texan and make that organization successful? The answer, yes. I truly believe he wants to do that. The issue, however, is, are the Texans wanting to move forward and put things in place? And if I'm him, yes, I'm sitting back, I'm waiting. Will I get a new head coach that can change the culture? Will I get maybe some receivers who can come in and help me push this ball down the field? Are there going to be cultural changes in the organization? If not, I want out of Dodge. And I think that's where we're still in that holding pattern. Going back to Eric Bieniemy, is there anything that's happening? We've seen several reports. There was a recent one that came out from Bleacher Report that he's getting the interviews, but there's not those warm fuzzies out there that someone truly wants to hire him. So now we got to wait and see until, to your point, do I think Kansas is going to make their way back to the Super Bowl? Yes, I'm of the same mindset. So we're going to have to wait and see that out. I do know there's organizations out there like the Fritz Pollard Alliance that's advocating on Eric Bieniemy's behalf. Personally, I would like to see Andy Reid be a little bit more vocal and really push Eric Bieniemy's name out there. And if that is something that Deshaun is waiting for, then maybe we will see something happen. So I think until those pieces are figured out, that's when we will learn whether or not Deshaun is going to be a Texan or not. But I do believe if he continues to be as vocal as he is over the next couple of weeks, draft picks or not, he's going to find himself out of Houston because no one is going to want to deal with it. He will get his way, and he's going to find himself in an organization that potentially is rebuilding with some new energy. Cough, cough, New York, the Jets. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's a possibility. So we'll wait and see. Before we wrap up today's episode, we got AFC, NFC competition quickly around the horn. Justice, in the NFC this weekend, who do you have?
This is a tough one. I'm gonna stick with Aaron Rodgers, the MVP. He's definitely gonna win the trophy. Carlton Davis, he did a great job against Michael Thomas last week, but Devontae Adams, he's a different animal. That man can run routes better than anyone I've seen in a while. Him and Stephon Diggs are right there for me. Devontae Adams is a different breed. I think he's going to toast that secondary, and I think Aaron Rodgers has a big day for the NFC.
Robert, let's switch over to the AFC. Who do you have?
I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs at this one. I really feel like Patrick Mahomes is going to give it a go, and I really feel like the team is going to rally around Patrick Mahomes, knowing that he is a little bit banged up. And Patrick Mahomes took him there to the promised land before, and I feel like the team is just going to galvanize the troops and rally around him and say, hey, you brought us here before, you led us, and we're going to carry you the rest of the way. So I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs over the Buffalo Bills.
Jeremy, who do you think is in the NFC?
Well, I think Green Bay. Green Bay playing at home is a big deal. I think the fans during the playoff have played a bigger role than teams wanted to admit. Green Bay had close to 7,000 fans there last week. Sounded like a lot more. That made it difficult for the opposing team.
In the AFC, I see the Kansas City Chiefs going back to the Super Bowl. There's just too many weapons. Patrick Mahomes, whether he's legitimately going through the concussion protocol or not, he'll be on the field playing. He'll have all his weapons. The defense is going to step up to the task. Why? They can taste back-to-back Super Bowl right there. So I definitely see the Kansas City Chiefs back in the Super Bowl. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. Look, have a great, safe weekend. Enjoy the AFC and the NFC championship games. And I am looking forward to bringing you more information from the Senior Bowl next week. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great week.